Hey, hello, my fellow property managers. Mark Cunningham at Grace Management. So let me speak to you for a few minutes about this idea of cash for keys. What is it, number one? And number two, how can we explain it to our owner clients? Because with everything going on right now in our industry, it may be time when you find yourself with your back against the wall in a non-paying tenant situation to consider a cash for keys option. So what does it mean definitionally? Let's step back for just a moment here. The concept, the definition of cash for keys, really, it's this. It's paying money to a non-performing tenant in order to regain possession of your property. You say, well, now, Mark, hold on. This is new to me. Why in the world would I pay money to the tenant? I thought they're supposed to pay money to me, aren't they? Isn't that the way this whole landlording thing is supposed to work? Why would I pay money to them to regain possession of my property? This sounds completely insane, and in a normal world, which we don't live in right now, this concept would be insane. But let's look at the reality. We have issues with COVID stuff going on. We have issues with eviction moratoriums. We have issues with non-paying tenants. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, this option of cash for keys is a very viable option for you as a property manager to explain to your owner client. So let me give you a couple examples of when you would want to potentially use this, and then I will tell you how to explain it to your owner clients to convince them of the irrationality of this concept, but why it is rational in specific instances. So let's take a step back, okay? Let's pretend that you have a non-paying tenant. Tenant doesn't pay rent. You as a property manager have two different goals at that time, and you can pursue both of these goals at the same time. We think of it this way. When a tenant doesn't pay rent, we are running down two different tracks at the same time, and there's a finish line on both of these tracks. One of these tracks, the finish line is to get payment from the tenant. Whether it comes from the tenant, whether it comes from a friend of the tenant, whether it comes from a government assistance agency, but get the money, right? That's one of the tracks that we're going to run down. We're going to run as fast and as hard down that track towards that goal of collecting money. But at the same time, we are running down a secondary track. The secondary track goal is to get possession. Get out of my property, give me possession of my property back, give me the keys so I can find a performing tenant. Now, it is very possible, my friends, to run down both of these tracks at the same time. You do not want to pick one and say, well, we'll just work to get the payment and we won't pursue the possession. I believe that a best course of action is to pursue both. And whatever happens first, happens first. So for us, for example, if we have a non-paying tenant, we say, hey, we would love to have you pay. We'd love to have you stay. But at the same time, we can't have you staying and not paying, so we have to pursue the legal option as well. And if you can come in with payment before we get the eviction date set, great, we'd love to have you stay. Because you can stay and pay, or you can move and not pay, but what you can't do, Mr. Tenant, is stay and not pay. That is not a viable option. That doesn't work for anybody. So you say, well, Mark, when would I consider this idea of cash for keys? Like, I understand this. I want to get possession. I want to get payment. Why, though? How does this factor into cash for keys? I'm glad you asked. So if we have these two goals in mind, okay, we have a non-performing tenant, and they say, I'm not paying, and you're going to walk down two different tracks, run down two different tracks, go for possession, go for payment. When do you want to consider a cash for keys option of going to your tenant and saying, hey, Mr. Tenant, can I give you money and you will give me back my property? I know you owe me money, Mr. Tenant. That's okay. You don't need to pay me. How about I pay you money if you give me the keys and move out of my property? When to potentially consider that as an option? Well, a couple of times. Number one, if the eviction process is extremely costly. Many states have eviction processes that will cost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. It may make economic and financial sense for you as the property manager to say, hey, I can go spend $5,000 to go through the legal eviction process to get my tenant out, but maybe I should, instead of spending $5,000 on my attorney, take $2,000 and give it to my tenant. I know, stick with me. It sounds crazy. This goes against every moral fiber of your being, doesn't it? You're like, Mark, this is unprincipled. They owe me money. Why in the world would I give them money when they have not paid me their contractual obligation? This is immoral. This is wrong. It goes against my ethical standings. I understand that. You're a principled person. Kudos to you, my friends, but we have to balance principled with the idea of also being pragmatic, right? We want to be principled pragmatics with this. So if it costs too much money to evict, that's one option to consider it. Number two, if the eviction process takes a long time, I have property manager friends in California, I kid you not, who have told me they have non-paying tenants who are going on 2 years living in a property and they can't get them out. Now, that sounds crazy to most of us, and it is crazy. It's California. I get it, and I don't know the extenuating circumstances. But in a case like that, if the rent is, let's just say, $2,000 a month, and you have a 2 years of non-payment, how much economical sense would it make, and how much money would it make sense if you put it into a mathematical equation? How much money would you offer to pay that tenant to get out and get your property back? That may be a time to consider. And number 3 time to consider is if the tenant simply refuses to move. Okay, so if you're going to spend a lot of money on an eviction, number 1. Number 2, it takes a long time. Or number 3, what if the tenant's just like, you know what? I'm not moving. Come get me. And you think, oh no, now it's going to take a long time. Now I'm going to have to spend a lot of money. So now items number 1 and 2 are checked, and you have to put your pride aside, my friends. I know this is a very humbling experience. Put your pride aside and say, listen, Mr. Tenant, I get it. I get it. You're in a financial predicament. I get it. I don't want to go through the eviction process any more than you do. I understand you don't want to move. Is there any type of a rational option we could come up with here where maybe I could pay you some funds to help you get into your next place and you could give me the keys back and get out of the property? Is there any dollar amount that would make sense to you? Because I don't want to go through the emotional hassle with you, Mr. Tenant, to get an attorney. That's going to be ugly for everybody. How about if I give you cash and you give me the keys? That's when you want to potentially do it. Now, before I tell you how to explain this to your owner, let me thank the sponsor for this month's video here, Tenant Turner. My friends, leasing season is almost upon us, which means it's going to get real busy. We need a lot of help with our leasing. The way we get our help is by using Tenant Turner. They automate so many inquiries into rental properties, so many responses, scheduling of showings. Like, it automates all that stuff that you don't want to be spending your time or paying someone to take their time to do as it relates to vacant properties, advertising, showings, all that stuff that we have to do, but it's time consuming. Reach out to my friends at Tenant Turner. Ask them just to give you a demo. Just say, hey, I want a demo. Show me the demo like you do for Marc at Grace Management. They'll show you how we set it up. I promise you will be impressed, and it may save you a tremendous amount of time. Okay, how do you explain this to your owner? 2 points, and then you can get out of here. Point number 1, you must help your owner be unemotional. Okay, owners are emotional about their rental property, and I get it. I get emotional about my rental property. I love it. It's mine. And so this idea of cash for keys to an owner, if they first hear this, they think this is the craziest thing they've ever heard. But you have to explain to them, Mr. Owner, I get it. I get it that this goes against all of the moral fiber of your being. This is not feeling good. I understand that. But we have to remove the emotion. Don't get mad at your tenant. If you're mad at your tenant, you're getting emotional. Remove the anger. And number 2, let's remember what our goal is. Because you have to help your owner focus on their financial goals and their big-term goals, right? If this is a mathematics equation or question we're pursuing, then suddenly cash for keys makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Or if the financial long-term goal of your property is occupancy, then suddenly a cash for keys options makes sense. Now, we don't have time in this video to get into the details of how much to offer to cash for keys and the logistical side of it and the legal side of it. We'll save that for a future video. This is just more of the idea of understanding the concept. And potentially when you find yourself in a situation where you're like, I don't know what to do, this is going to be a nightmare to get this tenant out. Ding, light bulb moment. Maybe you better talk to your owner to convince them on why it makes financial sense for them to pay money to a non-performing tenant to get possession of their property back. And because of the COVID stuff, guys, my friends, I think it's more realistic than ever before to have to consider this stuff. Hey, have I met you in person? Because if not, I would love to do so. Did you know that on our website, pmbuild.com, we have an events tab, and it says where I'm going to be because I have the benefit of traveling around. In the next week, if you're watching this video when it comes out, next week I'm speaking at the NARPM Broker Owner event in San Diego. Or excuse me, in where is it? San Antonio. I'd love to see you there. I'm speaking on the topic of professionalism. I hope to see you guys there. I'm going to be in California. I'm going to be in Virginia. I'm going to be in Memphis. I'm going to be somewhere else in the next couple months. Jump on that page there. Love to meet you at some point if we have the opportunity to do so. But my friends, until next time, I wish you a lot of success.